The King's Avatar, Chapter 1680 Unevenness and Surprise. Audio source, wuxia-world-audiobook.com. Chapter 1680, Unevenness and Surprise. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Phantom Demon. 1-inch Ash. Even though the live audience had the projections in the center of the stadium, giving them a comprehensive overview of the battlefield, many of them had still overlooked Qiao Yivan. No one had expected that from Yi Xiu to Tang Rou, both of them had only been trying to get the enemy's attention. The one to complete the attack was Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash. And 1-inch Ash's attack target clearly wasn't to interrupt, but to trade. The lightning wave formation that Jiang Botao's empty waves placed down was primarily for defense. It was to stop Happy from getting close to them. In this sense, Samsara had succeeded. Neither Yi Xiu's Lord Grim nor Tang Rou's Soft Mist could get close. After Tang Rou cancelled Dragon Breaks the ranks, she quickly moved away. Instead of trying to force her way in through another opening like everyone thought she would do, she ran as fast as she could out of the lightning wave formation's range. Then, there was Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash. He didn't get close. He didn't need to get close. While Yi Xiu and Tang Rou attempted to interrupt Jiang Botao's cast, he hid himself and quietly began casting his own spell. Whether the interrupt succeeded or failed, Samsara's attention would be drawn away from him. By the time 1-inch Ash appeared, he would be done casting, and it would be too late for Samsara to try and interrupt him. Dark Boundary. Darkness descended. The screens of 4 of Samsara's players went black as if the power had been cut off. The crowd went into an uproar. The battle had just begun. After only a single clash, the kings, Samsara, had suffered a huge loss. There were only 5 of them on the field, and 4 of the 5 had been caught in the darkness boundary. It was truly a rare sight. Samsara had overlooked Qiao Yifan's existence. This was absolutely a mistake on their part. However, at the same time, Happy's ingenious ploy had to be given credit as well. Because of how uneven it felt. An unevenness in skill between players was a common issue in new teams. Happy was a new team. There was Yi Xiu, one of the greatest players of all time, leading the way. Then, there was Su Mucheng and Fang Rui, 2 all-stars. After that, there was just a bunch of rookies. This unevenness was extremely apparent. And Wen Yi was considered Happy's weakness precisely because of this disparity in skill. However, Happy took advantage of this problem, creating a lot of strategies revolving around it. In this match, they once again utilized it. Compared to Wen Yi, Qiao Yivan had never been viewed as Happy's weak point. In fact, he was looked upon quite highly. Many Tiny Herb fans criticized the team for letting of such an outstanding player. Qiao Yivan shouldn't have been overlooked. The gap in skill between him and the top players on the team shouldn't have been so apparent. However, Happy set their own pace, creating this false image. First, Yi Xiu's Lord Grim charged out. Samsara had to focus their attention on him and answer back. Next, Tang Rou's Soft Mist charged out like a fierce tiger. Tang Rou had just achieved a 1v3 against them. Samsara obviously couldn't relax against her. The 2 of them quickly drew in all of Samsara's attention. In front of their imposing presence, Qiao Yivan seemed to be invisible. It was almost inevitable. Qiao Yivan didn't disappoint. He seized this opportunity well. There hadn't been any communication in Happy's chat during this time, but each of them seemed to naturally know what to do. The pro players, who paid attention to the details, also noticed that Wen Yi's little cold hands had drawn in the attention of Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer. Su Mucheng's Dancing Rain couldn't be ignored by him either. Not only were Wenyi and Sumuchung defending against Zhou Zekai's one-man assault, they were also taking away his attention. They had lured him to a position where he wouldn't be able to see 1-inch Ash unless he turned his head back. It seemed to just be a mistake from Samsara, but how could it be so easy for such a low-level mistake to happen to Samsara? This was a match between the two top teams in the alliance. Most of the time, mistakes didn't just happen. The opposing team made the mistakes happen. Happy had successfully set up a situation that led to Samsara making a mistake. Now, 4 of Samsara's players were blinded. Don't leave anyone out, Fang Minghua reminded everyone in the team chat. Although the 4 of them had been blinded, they could still use the team chat. Everyone, forward! Jiang Botao shouted. Forward! Which way was forward? Zhou Zekai's Cloud Piercer was forward. It seemed to be a fairly vague order, but everyone on Samsara immediately understood. The ones who hadn't been facing forward turned around. Despite being blinded, they were pretty close. Afterwards, move. No disorder could be seen. The team moved together as one. Jiang Botao's empty waves swung his sword again. Nebula wave slash. He unexpectedly went with this level 75 skill. It could be considered as quite wasteful just for defense, but wastefulness had its value. Tang Rou had originally been planning on rushing into the lightning wave formation to attack them, but she had no choice but to change her mind. Although Jiang Botao was blinded, he was able to create a powerful barrier around the 4 of them with Nebula Wave Sword. However, moving together as one wasn't exactly the wisest choice to escape from a ghost boundary. This was because the enemy Ghost Blade could just set up another ghost boundary wherever they were going towards, catching them in another net. Samsara did it anyways because they had one person who had not been caught. Zhou Zekai, Cloud Piercer. After seeing his teammates' movements, he immediately started assisting them. His first task was to stop Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash from placing down another ghost boundary. Turn fire. The bullets flying towards Little Cold Hands instantly shifted towards 1-inch Ash. However, Cloud Piercer couldn't actually see 1-inch Ash from his position. Even so, with the help from his teammates, he could get a rough approximation of 1-inch Ash's location. His attacks might all miss, but they would still seal off the areas where ghost boundaries could be placed. 1 step, 2 steps. Samsara's 4 players stayed together, and it looked like they would soon exit the range of the darkness boundary. Zhou Zekai didn't need to protect them for long. Sumuchung's dancing rain fired artillery shells at him to interfere. Tang Rou's soft mist dashed over. It looked like she wanted to body block Cloud Piercer's bullets. Troublesome. Zhou Zekai immediately had Cloud Piercer move. No matter what, he need to stop 1-inch Ash from placing down another ghost boundary. This moment was crucial. It's coming. 1-inch Ash stopped moving. Only a tiny bit of it peeked out. He had a clear view, and he was positioned at the right angle. He had finished casting his ghost boundary. He just need to set it down. He swung his Tachi, and soft mist was just about to reach him. A gunshot. The ghost soul's power began to spread from 1-inch Ash's blade. It's impossible. The stadium screens and the broadcast showed Cloud Piercer's perspective. There was no 1-inch Ash in his line of sight. Tang Rou's soft mist had covered him completely. This bullet would definitely be blocked. Pooh. A hit. WuxaWorldAudio.com. Blood spurted into the air from the bullet wound. Tang Rou didn't feel soft mist get hit, but then, the ghost god's power began to fade from 1-inch Ash's weapon. It hit. Qiao Yivan himself couldn't believe it, but the wound on 1-inch Ash was real. The damage wasn't much, but his ghost boundary had been interrupted. Where did the bullet come from? Qiao Yivan was puzzled. Tang Rou was clearer than him. The bullet had gotten past Soft Mist, yet Soft Mist and 1-inch Ash had been perfectly lined up. Curve firing. The stadium screens put on a slow-motion replay. Cloud Piercer had activated curve firing. The curve of the bullet had been extremely small. The extra time that it took for the bullet to curve was short enough that it could still reach 1-inch Ash in time. If he had acted slightly slower, 1-inch Ash wouldn't have been interrupted. Fortune had come. Even Josekai couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. He had dealt with this predicament. The final step. Samsara's 4 characters finally rushed out from 1-inch Ash's darkness boundary. Their eyes finally saw the light of day, when their screens suddenly turned black again. What? In that instant, the 4 on Samsara were wondering if the computers really had lost power. They had clearly seen a light. How could it have turned dark immediately afterwards? Even if 1-inch Ash's ghost boundary hadn't been interrupted, it couldn't have been another darkness boundary. He had cooldowns. Wait, Qiao Yifan's 1-inch Ash couldn't use darkness boundary again, which meant it had to be Yizhu. Lord Grimm. Their screens had been dark, so how could they know what Yizhu was doing? And by the time Josekai noticed it, it was too late. Yizhu's Lord Grimm had patched up the gap, placing down his own darkness boundary. Samsara had overlooked another person, and this time, it was Yizhu, the person who they should never overlook. But the pro players could completely understand. No matter how amazing Josekai was, he was only one person. Happy had put up a nearly impenetrable defense for 1-inch Ash. He had miraculously interrupted him with a curved firing. There hadn't been any time for him to look at Yizhu's Lord Grimm, even if just a glance. That bastard was simply too shameless. He had added a ghost boundary to his umbrella, darkness boundary. Dual-linking ghost boundaries. The pro players looked towards Team Void's 2 ghost blades. Because this was exactly like Team Void's signature move, including the unexpectedness of it. Of Team Void's Ghostblade duo, Li Xuan's Crying Devil was a standard phantom demon, primarily using ghost boundaries. On the other hand, Wu Yu's Carved Ghost was a hybrid class. What ghost boundaries he used were a mystery in every match. In the pro scene, Wu Yu's Carved Ghost was absolutely the craziest about resetting his skill tree. Every single match, he would reset his skill tree. No one knew which ghost boundaries he would coordinate with Li Xuan in the dual-linking ghost boundaries. Wasn't this sort of unexpectedness the same as what Yizhu's Lord Grimm was giving to Samsara? Right after exiting a darkness boundary, Samsara's 4 had entered another darkness boundary. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1681. The response of the top pros. Audio source: WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1681. The response of the top pros. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. In terms of damage taken, Samsara was actually doing quite well. The damage from darkness boundary was negligible. It was a prime example of a skill that was effective for its ability to create openings through its crowd control effects. However, despite being blinded in Qiao Yifan's darkness boundary, Samsara didn't take much damage. It wasn't that Happy wasn't trying. It was just that they had to respond to Samsara's answers. With 4 characters blinded, most teams would scatter to make it easier to escape from the darkness boundary. Even if 1 or 2 were focused down by the enemies and delayed, the others would quickly escape and be able to turn around and help their teammates escape. But this wasn't what Samsara did. After being blinded, the 4 of them moved together as one unit. It seemed like a disaster in the making, but Jiang Botao's empty waves created a beautiful protective barrier for them, with nebula waves preventing Happy from reaching them. They had made mistakes and overlooked certain players on the enemy team, but when it was time for them to take on the necessary burden, they didn't panic. They maintained the confidence and calm that a championship team should possess. The four on Samsara couldn't see what was going on around them, but they had their characters turn and move calmly, leaving the darkness boundary under the protection of Nebula Wave Slash. The only one who hadn't been blinded, Zhou Zekai, had also given them the greatest support possible. Under Suma Chung's barrage of artillery fire, he had miraculously interrupted Qiao Yifan's follow-up Ghost Boundary. Unfortunately, Qiao Yifan's 1-inch ash wasn't the only one with Phantom Demon capabilities. Yishu, Lord Grimm. While Zhou Zekai was completely preoccupied, Yishu was easily able to set up a darkness boundary, linking it together with 1-inch ashes. As soon as the four on Samsara exited the first, they stepped into the second. The nebula wave slash from Jiang Botao's empty waves didn't last forever, providing protection for them until they left. The first darkness boundary was its limit. Both the lightning wave formation and nebula wave slash were now out of the picture. Darkness surrounded them, and they were no longer protected. Tang Ro's soft mist was already rushing towards them. This time, how would Samsara stop Happy's advance? Zhou Zekai. He was only one person. Happy was attacking from 4 directions. It was impossible for him to take care of all of them. Pincer, go around 3, follow 2, fall back. These were Happy's initial arrangements. And at this moment, their characters were shing with brilliance after completing them. It was because of their positioning that Samsara had overlooked an enemy player twice. It was because of their positioning that the number 1 player, Zhou Zekai, had no way to protect the other 4 on Samsara. The other 4 on Samsara had finally responded though. They had been a bit surprised at first, but they quickly regained their composure. Jiang Botao immediately shouted, "Scatter," in the chat. Samsara had moved together as one previously because of Nebula Wave Slash. The skill had provided them with a protective barrier that enabled them to push forward without worry. Once they left the darkness boundary, they would be able to launch a fierce assault towards Happy's healer. However, they hadn't expected dual-linking ghost boundaries from Happy. Given their current situation, they had no way to protect everyone all at the same time while blinded. As a result, they could only go with the usual tactic, and scatter. Everyone on Samsara was a top player. It might be the same tactic, but it was completely different when executed by Team Sasmara. When normal players scattered, it would be every man for himself. The more that got away, the better. However, when Samsara scattered, there was logic and order to it. They scattered to minimize the casualties. The key, the healer. If all 4 scattered, who would be the easiest for Happy to focus down? The healer. No one mentioned it in Samsara's team chat because no one need to. Any one of the others could be focused, but if Fang Minghua's laughing song was taken into Happy's grasps, Samsara would be in an extremely terrible position. This was the difference between pro players and normal players. Minimizing the damage taken wasn't necessarily the most optimal goal. Keeping the situation balanced, maintaining intact formation, controlling the tempo, etc. All of these aspects need to be considered. The first thing Samsara did was provide support for Fang Minghua's laughing song. This task obviously couldn't be given to the other 3 who were blinded. Unless they had another skill similar to Nebula Wave Slash, they wouldn't be able to protect him from all sides. The only one who could take the task was Zhou Zekai. Scatter. Attack. All of these thoughts, all of these changes happened in a split second. Dragon breaks the ranks. Shincut. Two figures dashed out. One autumn leaf and cruel silence. Blind didn't stop him from using skills. Both of them used movement skills. As for which direction they went in. Forward. Both of them went forward. The order was to scatter, but neither One Autumn Leaf nor Cruel Silence did. The two characters rushed out towards the same direction. They were running away, but in the process of doing so, they didn't forget to keep up the pressure on Happy. Of course, their aim wasn't the most accurate because of the blind. The direction that they went in might not have any targets, but even so, they might be able to escape from the darkness boundary. Even if they didn't, they would be one step closer to their objectives. Dancing Rain, Little Cold Hands. The two were in this direction, and both were very afraid of an enemy getting close. Sun Xiang and Wu Qi coordinated their escape and rushed forward together. During their escape, they need to keep up the pressure on Happy. At this moment, there was nothing they could do about Happy's attacks towards them. However, by doing this, Happy would need to take into consideration how much of a threat Sun Xiang and Wu Qi would be to Sima Chung and Wenyi. Would they need to prepare countermeasures against this threat? This was Samsara's response. This was a response befitting a top team. Their response forced the enemy to answer back. Even if four of them were in a bad position, their reply back was filled with aggression. At the same time, Jiang Botao's empty wave swung his divine chain. Ice wave / ice crystals swept forward without a target. WuxaWorldAudio.com. Empty waves stepped on the path of ice that he paved, moving in the opposite direction of One Autumn Leaf and Cruel Silence. This direction, shattering the lands. Tangro charged forward, the moment the four Samsara players scattered. One Autumn Leaf and Cruel Silence dashed out, while Soft Mist used Shattering the Lands. The two characters had used movement skills, allowing them to escape from Shattering the Lands range. Unfortunately for Jiang Botao, he was heading straight towards it. He couldn't see, but there was one person in Samsara who could. Jiang, right 30 feet shattering the lands, Josekai warned the moment Soft Mist attacked. His meaning, Jiang Botao, 30 degrees to the right, shattering the lands. If the attack was there, then the character was there. How to respond? Josekai didn't say. He didn't have the time to give too detailed of a response. Empty waves hadn't even taken 2 steps along the icy path that he paved, when Jiang Botao noticed Josekai's warning. Shattering the lands was an AoE attack. It was 30 degrees to his right and had already come out. Empty waves had taken 2 steps in that direction. His chances of avoiding it, 0. I can't dodge. I can only attack back. Empty waves turned around. He turned right 30 degrees and swung his sword. Jiang Botao couldn't see anything, but in his mind, he could see the shattering the lands descending. Light wave / the fastest wave / shot out. Would it hit? Jiang Botao didn't know, so he didn't stop there. Empty wave swung his sword again. Fire wave / the strongest of the wave slashes flew out at an angle slightly lower than the previous light wave / Dot. Boom. Shattering the lands crashed down. Magic swept the ground. However, at the same time, everyone could see that Soft Mist was engulfed in flames. The fire wave / had hit. End chapter. The King's Avatar. Chapter 1682. The Center of Cruelty. Audio source, WuxaWorldAudiobook.com. Chapter 1682. The Center of Cruelty. Translator, Nomyami. Editor, Nomyami. Hit. Fire wave / landed. Through Josekai's concise tip in the team chat and his own intuition, Jiang Botao was able to land fire wave / on Soft Mist while blinded. Although his empty waves wasn't able to dodge shattering the lands, there was nothing else he could have done. He had been on the back foot, but was able to force a trade, and quite an impressive one too. Battle magic erupted, raging flames blazed. The two skills displayed their destructive power. The earthquake triggered by shattering the lands sent empty waves tumbling. At the same time, the fire wave swallowed soft mist, sending her crashing to the ground in a blaze of fire. Fire hit. Josekai confirmed the hit in the team chat. He was telling Jiang Botao that his fire wave had hit. It was equivalent to telling Jiang Botao where soft mist was. Jiang Botao understood. His stumbling empty waves raised his sword. The crowd cheered and clapped excitedly at this play, but the pro players were truly stunned. Not for the fire wave but for the raise of his sword. Because this time, empty waves was bearing the brunt of shattering the lands. Battle magic battered him, sending empty waves stumbling the entire way through. Empty waves was still blinded too. Even under these conditions, Jiang Botao was able to keep empty waves' balance and prevent him from falling to the ground. This was incredible enough already, yet he was also able to keep his sense of direction. Sword raised, gunshot. Cloud piercer fired. Josekai wasn't only paying attention to Tangro and Jiang Botao. As the only person on Samsara who could see, he needed to keep track of everything taking place on the battlefield. Sun Xiang's One Autumn Leaf and Wu Qi's Cruel Silence launched a sudden assault. To no one's surprise, Su Mucheng and Wenyi chose to retreat. They knew that once the two left the darkness boundary, it would be disastrous if they got too close. Thus, they might as well take precautions. As they retreated, they also took the opportunity to attack. Su Mucheng's dancing rain fired mercilessly towards the two blinded characters. Boom boom boom. Dancing rain's artillery shells bombarded One Autumn Leaf. Samsara's fans didn't think much of it. However, many of Happy's fans consisted of former Excellent Era fans. This scene made him feel quite uncomfortable. One Autumn Leaf Dancing Rain, best partners for 4 consecutive years. To the Excellent Era fans, they were used to seeing Dancing Rain providing cover for One Autumn Leaf, and One Autumn Leaf protecting Dancing Rain from enemies getting close. But now, Dancing Rain was trying to kill One Autumn Leaf. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Perhaps the scene of the two characters fighting together shoulder to shoulder might never appear again. But no one knew how long it would take for them to get used to this scene. Maybe it would be like this forever. Whenever Dancing Rain and One Autumn Leaf appeared on the battlefield together, everyone's first thought would be the two as partners, not enemies. Enemies. Every Glory fan who held a deep impression of these partners couldn't help but repeat these words in their heads. Then, they saw One Autumn Leaf charging towards Dancing Rain, not to protect, but to pressure her. They saw Dancing Rain aiming at One Autumn Leaf, not to provide cover, but to stop his advance. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling sad seeing this scene. Even Pan Lin couldn't help but comment on something outside of the scope of the match. But this is one of the cruelties of competition. The viewers watched the cruelty happening, and felt for the players on stage. Gunshot. A bullet flew from Cloud Pierce's gun towards Dancing Rain. Josekai was pressuring Dancing Rain. It could be considered as an attempt to interrupt this cruelty. However, Su Mucheng was the center of this cruelty, and she needed to persevere and continue for her team. She dodged Cloud Pierce's attack and continued to bombard One Autumn Leaf with artillery shells. You really are strong. Ye Xiu was also on stage. He could see everything as well. He knew that facing One Autumn Leaf was perhaps even more difficult for Su Mucheng. When Ye Xiu saw One Autumn Leaf, he at least knew that he himself wasn't the one there. But to Su Mucheng, One Autumn Leaf had always standing beside her. He was still standing there, but now, his spear was pointed at her. One autumn leaf might not be a friend anymore, but I still am. Cloudpiercer fired at Dancing Rain. Empty Waves raised his sword. By relying on his intuition, he was going to attack Soft Mist again. A figure suddenly flickered in front of him without any warning. Yishu, Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm had been wandering around the left side, mainly using long-ranged attacks to strike Samsara's holes. Suddenly, a shadow clone was left there, his real body cutting to the center of the battle. Colliding stab. Lord Grimm made his move. Jiang Botao had no idea what was happening. Zhou Zekai, who was supporting Sun Xiang and Wu Qi, hastily shifted targets in response to this sudden change. Warning Jiang Botao in the team chat would be too late. Boom. The myriad manifestations umbrella struck the plate armor on Empty Waves. WuxRWorldAudio.com. Empty Waves still swung his divine chains, but the gathered magic brushed past Soft Mist's side. Jiang Botao felt Empty Waves move. He felt Empty Waves getting hit by an attack. Who? By what? Lord Grimm pressed his sword against Empty Waves, planning on bringing him away with him using Colliding Stab. Cloudpiercer's gunfire arrived, but another person unhappy had arrived as well. Qiao Yivan. He coordinated together with Yishu's Lord Grimm from the right wing. Yishu's Lord Grimm had entered the darkness boundary, but he didn't. His 1-inch ash quietly circled around behind Cloudpiercer. There was only one pair of eyes on Samsara. Zhou Zekai had too many things he needed to take care of. His vision was limited. Happy had intentionally been focusing the main battle in one location, leaving an opening for Qiao Yivan to take advantage of. Get close, good enough, cast. The ghost god's power gathered around his blade. Qiao Yivan was extremely nervous. Would his attack hit? He stared intently at Cloudpiercer's back. He was afraid that Cloudpiercer would suddenly turn around and aim his gun at him. Cloudpiercer didn't turn around, but he did suddenly move. As he moved, his dual guns erupted in a blaze of sparks. In an instant, his bullets reached every part of the map. Rapid fire. Random firing. Zhou Zekai was planning on using this type of burst to cover the entire battlefield by himself. End chapter.